Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk About It.
Hi, everyone. I am Roxy in Maggio, and in honor of Women's History Month and walking out of Women's History Month, I wanted to take a moment to just really reflect, not just on my journey as a woman who happens to be a leader, but especially because women's leadership today for women looks different. And so I wanted to take a moment to reflect on that with you and share my journey with all of you. What's so crazy as I think about the moment that we're in here in life and just being a 32-year-old woman who is leading in multiple spaces and sitting in multiple different rooms, observing how the world is evolving, is my journey. And when I say my journey, I mean my career and my entire life and just how I grew up and everything that I have learned along the way of being a woman leader. It's crazy. I graduated from Howard University here in Washington, D.C. And I remember the moments when I was at Howard University. I studied healthcare and nursing. And I just knew I was going to go be a nurse. I was going to be a nurse and I was going to work in a hospital and I was going to be able to care for people and help people heal and get well. And then it dawned on me after rotations. And I said, you know what, Roxy, being a nurse is not for you. And so I sat there contemplating, what am I going to do with my career? And I ended up going into IT. And what's crazy about it is that I pivoted and went into cybersecurity. And I remember sitting at the desk working the cybersecurity job, saying to myself, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm learning so quickly. I'm learning overnight because I have no choice. And I got this call from a Microsoft recruiter and I found myself at Microsoft. Now, let me tell you about going into IT as a woman leader. I started my corporate career when I was about 24 or 23 years old. And I was at Microsoft. And some of the things that I take away from my time there, beyond being at such an amazing company and learning so fast, was being a young leader, being a young woman in leadership, being underestimated, and constantly looking to turn the corner. Microsoft was amazing, but it was an environment that was male dominated and we had to learn really quickly. And I remember this day like it was yesterday. We were talking with a mentor and we were talking about the LinkedIn economic graph, because for those of you who don't know, Microsoft owns LinkedIn. And a mentor said to me, like, you're so opinionated, you need to run for office. And I was just like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I ended up filing to run for office and became a councilwoman at 26 years old. Insane. But when I reflect on that journey, going from Howard University, being from Prince George's County, going into cyber, then going to Microsoft and blossoming in this tech career, I learned a lot about leadership. And what I learned about leadership is that at some point, it stops being about the role you hold and it becomes about the responsibility that you feel and the role that you play in those rooms. When I was at Microsoft, only 0.6% of the company were Black women. And I would look around all the time and I would say, look, we have so much power and we're building all these products, but yet there are no Black women in the room creating these products. But this is what I mean about it being about the responsibility that you hold. And so I learned at a really, really young age, beyond being tenacious, beyond being vision oriented, beyond being aggressive at times, because in some rooms you do have to be aggressive to be able to get your point across. That doesn't mean that you don't know how to be collaborative, but you do have to be aggressive sometimes to get to where you want to go. I learned that things were different. But I also learned that there is a uniqueness about being a woman and being a leader in certain rooms. And I learned that confidence and empathy and relatability don't have to be at odds. And I actually learned that those things were superpowers. And so I became a very young senior executive at the company, managing a team of 7 when I was just 26 years old, which was insane to me, how quickly life was moving. Now, before I go into this journey of how I immersed myself into public office and becoming a councilwoman, and how I continued to learn and build on my leadership skills, I'll pause there just for a brief moment of reflection, because there are so many women and so many people who might be watching this that are finding themselves in business or corporate America or doing several different things. And I want to tell you that learning and just honing in on who you are and what your strengths are always going to be your superpower. Some of the most impressive things that I've done in my career, which is lead teams at big tech companies valued at $1 trillion at a very young age, running large budgets, becoming one of the youngest executives at Amazon, uh, starting my own company, which we'll talk about in the next few minutes. What I've learned is there will never be another Roxy. There'll never be another me. And there are unique things that I bring to leadership that make me, that make people enjoy working with me, that make people excited and reinvigorated around the vision or the optimistic view that I have about the world, and this relentless energy that we are always going to get it done, no matter how, no matter what, no matter where, we're always going to find a way to get it done. And so before I go into the next story, I want to leave you with the reflection of sit with what makes you unique. And sometimes for me, that's my femininity and my stability and my confidence and my continuity. Those things don't have to be at odds. And they actually make me much more of a better leader than otherwise if I wouldn't be those things. Let's talk about innovation and AI, because I've talked to you about my career and the fact that I've been in tech for so many years now, working at Microsoft, Amazon, and Twitch, but you'll have to call me for those stories. And now leading my own neuroscience AI company. So let's talk about innovation, because I think there are so many conversations that are going on out there in the world, but I don't think that people are fully grasping what's at their fingertips in the way that they could be leveraging innovation. So I'll tell you a brief story before I jump in. The other day, I went to brunch with a dear friend who used to work at a company that shall remain unnamed for the times of today. And it's this crazy, crazy space company. And this friend said, Roxy, I've been building all these bots to help me with my life. And I said to him, what do you mean? Like, what are you having bots do? He's like, I have this one bot do my financial planning, and then I connect it to this other bot, and then it does this for my taxes, and then I connect it to that other bot that's my personal assistant, and they're all autonomous and they talk to each other. And when people hear autonomous, what a buzzword. Okay, so autonomous means that things just do what they're supposed to do and move on their own. So autonomous have the ability to make decision making power on their own. Okay. And so he said, oh, they're all autonomous and they're all connected to one another. So it's like I have somebody doing my life for me. Now let's pause, because I know some of you hear that and you're just like, that's crazy. Humans are not being humans anymore. But what was so interesting when this friend was telling me this over brunch, I was just like, oh, brilliant. This is amazing. Because most of you know, life is so crazy. I'm not fortunate enough that I have kids yet, but my kids are on ice in the freezer. But most of you know, if you have kids, you have to spend time with your kids. You have to nurture them. You have to be there for them, love on them. So that takes a chunk of time. Then if you're still working, you have to work. So that's 9 hours, about 8 to 9 hours in a day. So you have work. And then if you have a significant other or a partner, that's another couple of hours of your day. And then you have the time that you need to spend with yourself. Because if you're like me, I enjoy my own company. So sometimes I break out and dance parties with myself. But that leaves you with very little time in the day. And if you're like me, you want to scale your decision making power. And so when this friend told me this story, I said, you know what? I'm going to go home and create my own bot that's literally going to be plugged into my emails and be responding on my behalf because I'm a stickler for grammar. So it'll take me hours to respond to an email because maybe I get busy. So therefore, I start kind of going into the weeds. But I say this today because that is the state of innovation. Innovation is helping people shape their lives, helping people use AI to augment their human capacity so that you can spend time doing the things that matter most. And then I'll just tell you really briefly about the state of innovation because it's so cool. When I started this neuroscience company, it was because I lost my dad to mental illness. So I said, I'm going to build a neuroscience company that helps me understand and model the internal state of a human that helps systems be more adaptive. Systems are really great at language and perception, but they lack structured representations of the human internal state. So I started building a company to be able to do that. That's what innovation is doing. Why do we need to do that? Because systems will continue to get smarter, they will continue to advance, and everything will continue to be centered around productivity. But how do you augment your decision making power? That is something that we still don't have a lot of. And so I want to make sure that you know all of the things that are at your fingertips because AI is not going away. It's not going anywhere. And for those of you who don't know, it's been around for decades. It's been around for quite some time. And we've just continued to refine on it and refine on it and refine on it and build on automation so that people can have more time to do the things that matter. Yes, now are there some governance aspect of it that matter as a trust and safety professional who's done that in the past? Of course. But what I want to encourage you, your kids should know how to build bots. They should. They should know how to build bots because that's the future. Your kids should know how to program their own computer languages because that's the future. Your kids and those around you should know how to leverage artificial intelligence to enhance your productivity because that's the future. And very soon, a lot of things will be automated. But you know what will never be automated is you. And so make sure you leverage it to make sure you have better decision making power. Because at the end of the day, we all need more hours in the day. And this is how you get there. Okay, so we've talked a lot about my journey to corporate America, Roxy and Madu, and the questions that I get from people, which is how did you do all of this at such a young age? But now I want to talk to you about the next phase of my life. I want to say the halfway point of my life, but I'm only 32 years old, so it doesn't feel like the halfway point when I was 26. But now I want to talk to you about the second part and what that means in my leadership setting. So I spoke briefly and I told you when I was at Microsoft, I got this nudge to run for public office, which I took. And what's so crazy about that story is when I was in corporate America, I was told you should run for office. And so I did. I looked around and I saw that there was a city council race coming up. And this was back in 2019. I saw the city council election was going on. And so I was the second to last person to enter and ended up winning by only 16 votes. So you can imagine my surprise. Here I am working at Microsoft, and now I am the youngest woman elected to the city council at 26 years old. So here I am learning about Robert's Rules of Order and all of these things about government. But what was so beautiful about that moment and that journey is I was already at Microsoft leading a team of six. And when I was leading this team of six, I was 26 years old and everybody on my team was in their 50s. And so here I am because I truly understood a lot of the things that we were working on at Microsoft with the Department of Defense and with other civilian agencies and some commercial customers in product customization. I had a little bit of a leg up coming into city council because of my understanding of government operations. But what was so amazing about becoming a city councilwoman and now taking on this huge foray of responsibility was that I was now responsible for 20,000 constituents in my district, which is District 4, by the way. Responsible for 20,000 constituents in my district. And then also responsible for appropriating a government budget and thinking through what is it that the constituents want to see differently? And how do we do that? And how do I lean on my private sector experience as somebody coming from Microsoft who understands how budgets are ran, who understands how to connect with customers, who understands the consumer mindset? How do I relate all of that experience over and serve my constituents in a way that they believe in, that makes them feel seen, that makes them feel like I am a steward of responsibility for this time, for this moment? And that was beautiful. And during my time on city council, I did a lot of things. And I'm still on city council. I talk about during my time, like I'm not there anymore. I'm still on city council. I'm still representing District 4, and I'm in my second term now. I did win my reelection in 23. And when I think about it, I've done so much as a councilwoman. A lot of people say, "Oh, but you're so young. Like, how do you sleep?" The answer is not really, because I feel like when you have this tenacity, when you have this vision, when you're so hungry to be there for people and to honestly be what people were not in your life, it drives you in a very different way to see results. And so we did a lot. I remember when I first started on city council, we did a lot around COVID. We were here during COVID. It was like COVID started the next day after I got inaugurated. You're welcome. And I'm sure we all have the experiences that we went through during COVID, but we did a lot for small businesses and we did a lot for constituents around COVID. I did a lot about workforce development because as somebody who transitioned from healthcare to big tech, I understood how difficult that was because I had to learn a new skill overnight. But then on top of that, I had to learn how to lead in areas that I might not have been familiar. So I walked around uh, asking people, could I be their reverse mentor and could they mentor me? So if I reverse mentor you and you mentor me, we're instilling those flows of wisdom back into each other where I get to see the world the way you see it and you get to see the world the way I see it. And that helped me become a better leader. But the biggest thing that I learned that's so relevant as a woman in leadership was that the most underrated skill set across all of that, across corporate, across my career in public service, was emotional intelligence, was understanding how to read the room, understanding how to learn what it is that people truly desire, what they're saying without actually saying it, what everybody's motivations are, what competing priorities are at play, and how do you balance all of that for the greater good? That is what I learned throughout my time in corporate and throughout my time in public service. Now, we went further to do so much more. I brought the first STEM school to Prince George's County because I saw uniquely after I left Microsoft and went to Amazon and became the chief of staff for trust and safety and customer experience before I left the company and started my own neuroscience technology company. I learned that our kids were not able to competitively compete and sustain in certain environments because they were not having early exposure to STEM resources and STEM schools. So I became a champion for that. I brought a lot in economic development because I understand what it means to live, work, and play in the environment that you work in, that you live in, and that you want to stay in. And we did so much, and we continue to do so much and continue to deliver for our constituency, because one thing that you'll learn out of my entire time with you here tonight in this reflection is that I am driven to be the advocate that I never had in my life. I didn't talk too much about my childhood because um, it's out there for public consumption, but I didn't have a lot. My father wasn't always the most present. My mom was a single mother, and she was a nurse and trying to make a life. We had just moved to Bowie in 1999, and we were really learning how to thrive in an evolving landscape. And with language barriers and things, I had to grow up really fast. And so there were several things that I encountered along the way, from my journey from high school to college to then corporate to now even leading my own technology company, that I saw were not fair for people, and were not as enabling of an environment that we should have. And so a lot around my leadership is around doing things that I wish people did for me, doing things that I wish existed to make it easier for other people. And in that journey, I learned that I talked about emotional intelligence. I learned that being firm and being relational can coexist, because sometimes you have to stand your ground, especially as a young woman. I think sometimes people feel like they can engage with me in a casual manner, or that my leadership has to be different or submissive or whatever the case may be because of the age dynamic and that factor, that they've now started to see that you can be firm and be relational at the same time and achieve results, and that you can redefine leadership in a way where it is embodied and it is rooted in those who you serve, no matter what type of leader you are. And when I reflect, as I'm rounding up my reflection here with you tonight, I think about the fact that for such a long time, leadership has been defined in such a narrow way. And what I am learning now, in being a councilwoman for 6 years and leading a neuroscience technology company for 2 years now, and having a growing and evolving employee base that is so excited about the work that we're doing in emotional health and emotional intelligence and neuroscience AI, is that emotional intelligence is one of the strongest skills one could ever have. That relationship building is a priority. That having a clarity of your vision and who you are and what drives you and why it drives you are not just soft skills, but they're the governing skills that truly round out leadership. And what I want to leave you with here tonight is that it hasn't been easy being a young Black woman in leadership. I think there are a lot of stereotypes that people like to throw out there, a lot of biases that people project onto you. Um, the fact that you're constantly navigating perception versus reality, and you're staying grounded to embody a new type of leadership to the generation that's coming up, that's watching you, hasn't been easy, and it's been a work in progress. But what I will say is that work in progress, and the fact that I represent a constituency that is so dynamic and so resilient and so amazing and so excellent. I say this all the time. I am my constituency and they are me. We are one. We are the same person. We are one, because our stories are so similar. I say that staying true to who you are and showcasing that type of leadership sets the example for those around you. It shows people the art of the possible. It helps you achieve the results. It helps you have this long resume, like myself, to continue to keep thriving and keep pushing and to know why you do it. And so I want to leave you with this. The future of leadership, especially for women, it's never, ever going to be waiting for permission again. I think my life has shown that to be true, that we, as young up and comingers, or whatever you want to call it, I don't think I categorize as young anymore, so I'm 32, so technically I'm a millennial. We, as young up and comingers or millennials, we're not waiting for permission. We're not waiting for our turn. We're stepping forward with clarity. And even if the moment is not perfectly structured, we're still leading from where we are. And we're still dedicated to doing the best based off of what those who have come before us have done. There are so many amazing women that I look up to, like my mom, who was the ultimate entrepreneur of my time, who showed me how to be this resilient woman and not really care too much about what other people say, and to stay strong in your faith and stay strong in your clarity of self. And I continue to build on the lessons that she's taught me over my life. And I continue to use that as a driver to go forward. And so if there's anything that I hope you take away from our time here and my reflection, because we're spending time together, is that progress doesn't happen by accident. It really happens when people take a bold step forward and stay dedicated to moving things forward together. I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for all of the things that you're working on. I'm excited for all the things that I'm working on and all the things I'm learning. I continue to learn every single day, especially with everybody in this community and everybody in the world and all of the awesome things that so many people are working on. So thank you for listening, and reach out, connect with me, share your stories, tell me about your reflection, because like I said, we go farther when we're together and we go a very short distance when we're alone.